Welcome to episode 2 of the TODCast podcast. Just to recap, in episode 1 in the previous episode, we defined the term community development, how it pertains to TODCO Group, our Soma neighborhood, and the city of San Francisco. In this episode, we're going to cover the same topic, but why it's so important, to the people that live here, the people who work, live here. I'm going to toss it up to Peter and kind of ask that question. Why is community development so important to the people that live, work, and play in the city of San Francisco?
Yeah, huge topic. And it's a cliche, I know. But it puts people first, it puts communities first. You know, you've heard the slogans, right? Again, people first, people over profits, all of that. We really believe in centering, the human experience around the human, right?
Yeah,
And not turning them into, lines on a spreadsheet or anything like that. And it's really about empowering people to advocate for their needs, make sure that they're heard and are delivered, right? I think that's the most important part. We do say a lot that community development is in TODCO's DNA because our organization was initially started as a different organization called TOR, Tenants and Owners in Opposition to Redevelopment. And it was, a group of union organizers and pensioners and people who lived in a neighborhood that was about to be bulldozed. And, they said, hey, wait a minute, like we live here now, and like
yeah,
what's going to happen to us.
yeah,
So I think why community development really is so important is because it really centers the conversation around, in my opinion, what's most important, which are people, families, and really delivering for them things that will, in theory and in hope, have them a better, more dignified life.
yeah. And would you say, um, with that perspective, we're thinking much bigger than just the rooms available itself? I know often on the topic right now with zoning or with building housing, it seems that it seems that you can get lost in just we need to build more X amount of units with zero consideration or maybe a lack of consideration for the quality of life of the people, not only the people that live in the places where they're in develop, but also, hey, housing is just one aspect of it, right? And if that housing is at a certain rate, what is the quality of life? Would you say that with community development, why it's so important, and how we're defining it is, would you say we're thinking much bigger than that, right? I'm not sure if I'm wording
Yeah.
this right, but I'm really kind of want to focus on that aspect, that it seems that the topic can often get lost in what do you mean? We're going to build X amount of housing at this rate, which can be unaffordable, but then there's a complete lack of thought for the community itself. It's just the housing. There's no thought to the neighborhood. How would you kind of explain that theory, and
Yeah,
how it
yeah.
relates to the importance? And sorry if I'm rambling, but maybe you can
It's a
make,
hard
yeah,
subject. Yeah,
yeah,
the language is not always there about these things, and I think even in you trying to sort of define the question, it demonstrates how difficult it is to work in this space, right?
yeah,
Because development is not simple. There are a lot of considerations that go into it, and you're right. It is much more than the units that go up. I mean, you also need just city infrastructure to support that, right? If you're going to throw a building up, that's increased sewage use. You need water, you need electricity. Everything is connected, right? And the community, I mean, in the title of community development, it is community, right? It's a
yeah,
holistic approach, right? We need to make sure we're meeting every need, and quite frankly, one of those needs is housing that is actually affordable, which is a whole nother can of worms that I almost guarantee we will talk about in a later episode. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, I think it's very important to recognize, that a human being cannot survive if they're just sitting in a room ordering DoorDash, eating pizza, watching Netflix, right? Like
yeah,
that's not a life. People are not happy. We are creatures that need sunlight. We need air. We need to interact
yeah,
with each other. We need community, right? Something that I
yeah,
think might be a little kind of underappreciated, or just something that I don't think is super apparent too, is when I hear this a lot where you're like, okay, well, um, you know, we build affordable housing in the Sunset, and we'll say, I'm just using a complete hypothetical, right? So
Yeah.
like, why don't we, move some Chinatown seniors into that housing out there? Like, why do we have to build affordable housing in certain neighborhoods, for example, right? You hear that a lot. People get upset when affordable housing comes into a neighborhood. And what we find though, right, is that it's a health issue. If you have a senior that is monolingual, they have a community in one area, they have, grocery stores that serve the food they know how to make, they have their church there, for example, their community network is there. If you remove them and put them on the other side of the city, they're not going to necessarily take that 2 hour bus ride. They're cut off from, their whole support network. And we see that they die at an earlier age. There's more health problems.
Yeah.
Life is generally worse. That's just kind of an example of the importance of really thinking holistically about how we build out, the neighborhood, the city, the communities that we really kind of want to see and need, right? And so it really is an
Yeah.
intense, starts out as a set of policies and thoughts that hopefully do get implemented, but it's really kind of important, to center what's important here, which is the value of humanity and community.
Yeah. No, I think that example is a perfect example to highlight how important it is, because I think oftentimes maybe you don't think about it in that way, or people cannot think about it in that way. But you're right. It's removing a person from their network, their support group. Kind of almost isolating, especially, and it's more important in older age as well. If that's one example, right? One example is
Yeah.
just that elder, but that's also the community we serve through our senior housing, and you're not able to move around the city as well, as you would if you're younger, maybe in your earlier days, just because of health reasons, and to move the person. It kind of just highlights the importance of what you were saying, of
Yeah.
the
And I'd
community
say,
and the
yeah,
support
I
group.
would just, if you don't mind me jumping in, also like,
Yeah.
being intentional about when we develop having the proper services for the proper communities, right? Like our senior buildings have medical care, they have art therapy, community movie nights. We bring in the lion dancers,
Yeah.
during Chinese New Year. It's just also really important that we're intentional about the use of the spaces we create in a way that sort of maximizes community engagement.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a perfect place to kind of wrap up this episode 2, um, and kind of preview episode 3, the next episode, which is TODCO's role in land use, which we'll dive into in episode 3. And yeah, we look forward to getting into that topic with our listeners and everybody that's watching, and kind of being a part of this early and growing community in the podcast. So we'll see you guys in episode 3.
Thank you all.
Everyone, for listening to this episode of the TODCast podcast, an official TODCO group podcast. Make sure to follow us and subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, where we'll be uploading all of our latest episodes. If you follow us on Spotify, you'll get a notification every time that there's a new upload. Also, make sure to follow us on social media at TODCO Group across all social platforms. We're going to be posting every time we have a new episode uploaded.
And we also just would love to hear from you. My email is peter@todco.org. Andres is andres@todco.org. And just please give us your honest feedback.
Yes, 100%. And we look forward to developing this podcasting community with you all. And we'll see you on the next installment of the TODCast.